The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers, their warm light reflecting across polished marble floors. Soft piano music drifted through the room, while elegantly dressed guests laughed, danced, and greeted one another as if they had known each other for years. Waiters moved gracefully between groups, offering drinks and desserts, and every corner of the hall seemed filled with cheerful conversations. Emma stood near the entrance for a moment, wondering if she should leave before anyone noticed she had come alone. She adjusted the sleeve of her simple navy blue dress and forced a small smile. It had taken her nearly an hour to decide what to wear. She rarely attended events like this anymore. Most evenings were spent helping her 8-year-old daughter with homework, preparing dinner, folding laundry, and planning how to stretch the week's budget. Tonight, her sister had insisted on babysitting, saying, "Go out for once. You deserve one evening for yourself." Emma wanted to believe those words, but now that she was here, she wasn't so sure. She quietly walked to an empty table near the edge of the room. Around her, couples shared the dance floor while old friends embraced and exchanged stories. Every few minutes, someone crossed the room to greet another guest with excitement. Watching them made her feel even more out of place. She reached for a glass of water, hoping it would give her something to do with her hands. A few people smiled politely as they passed, but no one stopped to start a conversation. It wasn't that anyone was being rude. Everyone simply seemed busy with the people they already knew. Emma had almost forgotten what it felt like to be part of a crowd without feeling lonely. Since her divorce 4 years earlier, life had become a routine of responsibilities. She loved her daughter more than anything, but being both mother and father was exhausting. There were days when she handled everything with strength, and there were nights when, after her daughter had fallen asleep, the silence in their apartment felt unbearably heavy. As laughter echoed through the ballroom, Emma lowered her eyes and whispered to herself, "Maybe some people are just meant to stand on the sidelines." She blinked back the tears before anyone could notice, unaware that across the room, someone had quietly seen the loneliness she had tried so hard to hide. Daniel had not planned to stay at the party for long. Like Emma, he had almost decided not to come. Since becoming a widowed father 4 years earlier, social events often reminded him of everything he had lost. Most conversations eventually turned to family vacations, anniversaries, or couples' plans, and he never quite knew how to answer. Still, the host had been a close friend, so he felt it was important to attend. As he stood near one of the windows, talking with a few guests, his eyes wandered across the room. That was when he noticed Emma. She wasn't looking at her phone or trying to draw attention to herself. She simply sat quietly, watching everyone else enjoy the evening. There was something about her expression that felt familiar, not dramatic, not desperate, just quietly lonely. Daniel recognized that feeling because he had lived with it himself. He remembered attending his first school function after his wife's passing. Parents stood together, chatting while their children played. He had smiled through the evening, but inside he had felt completely invisible. No one had meant to ignore him. People simply didn't know what to say. Looking back at Emma, he thought, maybe she's feeling the same way. For a moment, he hesitated. He didn't want to embarrass her or make her feel like someone was pitying her. But he also knew that sometimes the hardest thing to do was to take the first step toward another person. Taking a slow breath, he walked across the ballroom. "Excuse me," he said with a warm smile. "Would you mind if I sat here for a minute?" Emma looked up, slightly surprised, then nodded. "Of course. I'm Daniel." "Emma." For a few moments, they simply talked. Not about painful memories or personal struggles, but about the music, the food, and how crowded the ballroom had become. The conversation felt natural, free from awkwardness. When the band began playing a slow, familiar song, Daniel glanced toward the dance floor before looking back at Emma. "I know this may sound a little unexpected," he said with a gentle smile, "but would you like to dance?" Emma blinked in surprise. "I haven't danced in years," she admitted with a nervous laugh. "Neither have I," Daniel replied. "So if we make a few mistakes, we'll blame the music." For the first time that evening, Emma laughed without forcing it. She accepted his hand, and together they walked onto the dance floor. Neither of them danced perfectly. They occasionally missed the rhythm and smiled at their own awkwardness. But somehow that made the moment even more genuine. For a few minutes, they weren't a single mother and a single father carrying years of responsibility. They were simply two people reminding each other that kindness can make even the loneliest evening feel a little less lonely. After that evening, Daniel and Emma didn't suddenly become inseparable. There were no dramatic declarations or promises. Instead, their friendship grew slowly, the way real trust often does. A few days after the party, Daniel sent a simple message. "It was nice talking with you. I hope you got home safely." Emma smiled when she read it. It wasn't a flirtatious message or an attempt to impress her. It was thoughtful, and that was something she hadn't experienced in a long time. They began meeting for coffee whenever their schedules allowed. Sometimes they talked for hours, and sometimes they simply enjoyed the quiet. They discovered they had more in common than either of them had expected. Both knew what it was like to carry the weight of raising a child alone. Both had learned to hide their exhaustion behind polite smiles. Both had spent years putting everyone else's needs before their own. Neither of them tried to fix the other's past. They simply listened. One Saturday, Daniel suggested bringing their children to a nearby park. Emma was nervous at first. She didn't want her daughter to become attached to someone who might disappear from their lives. But the afternoon turned out better than she had imagined. The children spent hours laughing, racing each other across the playground and sharing ice cream. Watching them from a park bench, Emma noticed something she hadn't felt in years, a sense of peace. Daniel wasn't trying to impress anyone. He patiently helped his son tie a loose shoelace, wiped melted ice cream from his face, and cheered every time the children climbed a little higher on the playground. Those small moments told Emma more about his character than grand gestures ever could. As the weeks turned into months, their friendship became a dependable part of life. They celebrated birthdays together, encouraged each other through difficult work days, and helped whenever one of the children became sick or needed extra support. For the first time in years, Emma realized she no longer felt like she had to face every challenge alone. Daniel experienced a similar change. His home, once quiet after his son's bedtime, slowly filled with laughter during shared dinners and weekend visits. The emptiness he had carried for so long didn't disappear overnight, but it became easier to bear because someone genuinely understood it. They never pretended that love erased grief or hardship. Instead, they discovered something far more meaningful. Healing often begins when two people stop trying to rescue each other and simply choose to walk through life's challenges together, one ordinary day at a time. A year had passed since the evening that quietly changed both of their lives. Time had not erased every hardship, but it had taught them that happiness could return in unexpected ways. They had built a friendship rooted in honesty, patience, and mutual respect. What began with a single conversation at a party had grown into something neither of them had been searching for, yet both deeply appreciated. One evening, they received another invitation to a formal gathering at the same ballroom where they had first met. As they walked through the entrance together, Emma paused for a moment. The elegant decorations, the music, and even the arrangement of the tables looked almost unchanged. It felt as though time had folded back on itself. "I remember sitting over there," she said softly, pointing toward the corner where she had spent most of the previous party alone. Daniel followed her gaze and smiled gently. "I remember wondering if I should come over and say hello," he replied. "I almost talked myself out of it." Emma looked at him with grateful eyes. "I'm glad you didn't." As the evening continued, they laughed with friends, shared stories, and enjoyed the celebration without the loneliness they had once carried. When the band began playing a slow song, Daniel held out his hand. "This dance should go a little better than the first one," he joked. Emma laughed. "I hope so." They stepped onto the dance floor, smiling as they remembered how awkward and nervous they had both been a year earlier. This time there was no fear of being judged or overlooked. They simply enjoyed the moment. While dancing, Emma noticed a young woman sitting quietly by herself near the edge of the room. She recognized the same lonely expression she had once worn. When the song ended, she walked over, introduced herself, and invited the woman to join their table. On the way home that night, Emma reflected on everything that had happened. "I used to believe kindness was something small," she said. "Now I know it can change the direction of someone's life." Daniel nodded. "Sometimes the most meaningful thing we can do isn't solve someone's problems," he replied. "It's making sure they don't feel alone while facing them." Their story became a quiet reminder that compassion doesn't always arrive in grand gestures. Often, it begins with noticing someone who feels invisible, offering a simple smile, or extending a hand without expecting anything in return. Moral: never underestimate the power of kindness. One sincere act of compassion can restore hope, rebuild confidence, and remind someone that they are seen, valued, and never truly alone.